Cynthia, thank you for having me over to answer some of your queries on mental health. Starting off, the first question that I've got is how do I control or reduce my obsessive compulsive symptoms? Well, it's a very big question. It's not something that can be addressed in a brief video. Also, out of the questions that I've got, almost all of them are about anxiety. Anxiety related to sleep, perhaps to dreams, anxiety related to future, anxiety because I can't meet my friends during the pandemic, heaviness in the chest, I'm not able to think clearly into the future, I'm not able to analyze what I want to do with myself, stream of insecurity, always feeling that I'm less than the other person, having panic attacks, I feel like no matter what I do, it's never enough, it's never going to be good enough. These are all classic symptoms of anxiety. Even obsessive compulsive thoughts and actions are essentially anxiety based. So let me just talk to you about what you can do for anxiety. Anxiety is essentially a fear or apprehension. It is based on something that can happen. Sometimes we carry a lot of sadness within us because of things that happened in the past. Now the biggest problem here is we don't acknowledge our problems. As a society, we are used to sweeping things under the carpet. If there is a problem, let's not think about it. Let's not do anything about it. It'll go away on its own. That seems to be the strategy, and that strategy will not work. All right. The other thing that we as a society need to be open to is discussing the possibility that you can have emotions which other people don't agree with. Like you may have gotten admission into a great college and everybody thinks your life is set, and you may be feeling, oh my God, this is not what I want to do with my life. It's perfectly fine. The way you think and the way you feel, if it's different from others, don't judge yourself. If you feel that your goals, your aspirations are different from what everyone else recommends, it's fine. If you feel that there are certain things, a certain perspective that you have about life, about who you are and what you want to be, and whether it is related to your career, your choice of a life partner, your sexuality, feel free to trust your heart first before you trust anything else. The other problem, we need to be able to identify what is bothering us before we get around to solving it. If we constantly keep sweeping things under the carpet, you're not going to be able to identify the problem, understand it, and then how then will you solve it? So recognition of the problem. And I don't mean a diagnosis. I'm not saying recognition of the problem means you need to have a diagnosis. I'm saying you need to know what's bothering you. And sometimes it's not something that's happened now or in the past few months. It could be something that's happened way back and which you have suppressed over the years and has for some reason gotten triggered now and is coming out in very unpleasant ways. So all these reasons, all these causes could be why anxiety is predominant. Could it also be sadness? Could it be depression? Now, sadness and depression, they are two different words referring to the same emotion. And one of them is technically a diagnosis for a disorder, and one of them is just a state of, it's just an emotion, a name for an emotion. So before you go around labeling yourself as I'm depressed or I have OCD or I have any problem, please let the experts do their job. Talk to a mental health professional. Which mental health professional? As students, not everyone can afford going to a mental health professional. Very often we don't want to tell our parents that this is bothering us. There are a lot of free helplines in Mumbai city. They will talk to you at fixed hours. They will not ask you for your money. They will not even sometimes ask for your identification. Okay, so it can be a completely anonymous process. The most famous and the most common one is the one which is run by Tata Institute of Social Sciences, TISS. So go ahead, call these guys, set up appointments with them. You can either do it on phone, you can either email them, or you can go ahead and download their app. I can send the link and I will send it to your organizers, but if you don't get access to the link, just feel free to go ahead and search for it on Google. Essentially, what can you do right now? Simple thing, learn to do deep breathing. I'm not saying fancy meditation, yoga, nothing. I'm just saying whenever, wherever, sit quietly, take a few deep breaths. Imagine your body is a balloon. So when you inhale, the balloon expands, and when you exhale, the balloon deflates. So The balloon includes your entire torso. So imagine your stomach coming out when you're inhaling and your stomach going in when you're exhaling. Exhale through your mouth. That also reduces the anxiety levels. And I'm not saying that this is a cure-all, but deep breathing physiologically allows your systems to come to a state of relaxation. Now, these questions about I don't know whether I'm good enough, whether I'm capable enough, whether whatever I do will ever amount to anything, what should I do to improve myself and become better? In fact, one of the questions, I want to become better every day as compared to the previous day. It's a great goal to have. It's also a great amount of pressure and burden. Don't put yourself in such a difficult spot. Every day you don't want to be looking at, oh, what did I do yesterday? Like, did I do 10 push-ups yesterday, so today I'm going to do 11. So did I have 8 hours of sleep, so now I'm going to have 7 hours of sleep. Don't micromanage your life like this. Keep the big picture in mind. Have specific goals, and these goals need not be about your career and saying, okay, 5 years down the line I'm going to be the boss of some company. That's fine. We don't expect that all of you should know exactly what you're going to do with your life at the age of 18, 19, 20, 21. It's cool. It's fine to not know. It's okay to not know. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be a little frustrated with life at times. It's okay to be unhappy with yourself and the world. You guys are growing, evolving, coming to recognize that the world outside is very different from what you thought it was, and you're adjusting. Okay? Society is quite mean. Social media is quite mean. Constant comparisons which make you feel like you are less. There is truly no cure for that. The first thing that you could do is stop comparing to other people. You'll learn to recognize people for what they are and accept them. They need not be the best. Everyone has their flaws. No human being is perfect. Everybody is flawed. That includes your teachers, your parents, your friends, all the doctors, people like us who are mental health professionals. No one's perfect, right? You also have flaws. What you need to focus on is, okay, this is my flaw. What do I do to improve it? Not all of it is possible for you to do on your own, which is why you need a mental health professional. Talk to a psychologist first, or you can even, like I said, call these mental health services. They will recommend whether you need to go to the next level and whether you need medication and need a psychiatrist or no. That's fine. You don't have to rush straight off to a psychiatrist and say, oh, give me medication, I'm anxious. Explore what is happening first. Let the professionals decide. Also, I know it's very common for people to have weed, and I know nobody likes to talk about it. And they say it's all good, it allows me to concentrate. And it's not a great idea. Your brain is developing till you're about 23 or 24. And the part of your brain that is still developing is what we call this part, the executive function, thinking, reasoning, problem solving, decision making. That part of your brain is still growing. And if you're going to expose it to drugs, herbal or chemical, it's not a great idea. It plays with your mind. And yes, there is this entire debate about whether it is healthy, unhealthy, medicinal. In some countries they have okayed it. Whichever countries they have okayed it, they're not asking young kids to have it. Let's remember that, okay? Do a lot of deep breathing exercises. Every day, one thing that you need to do is spend time alone with yourself. When I say spend time alone, I don't mean scrolling your phone or putting on music. I mean sit alone, absolutely no stimulus from anywhere else. You could close your eyes if you feel comfortable, but those who have a high anxiety usually don't feel comfortable. So open your eyes, sit somewhere and just do nothing. Just be a lump, literally, and watch yourself. Watch your body, observe. You will realize that one part of your body is a little heavier, something is tighter, something is tingling. Notice that. Nothing to do about it, but just recognize that a lot of sensations are in your body, and some of those sensations are because of the emotions in your mind. And when you allow yourself to access your emotions and think about what it is that you're actually feeling, you can then go back to figuring out, why am I feeling like this, and then what can I do about it? Okay, so all your anxiety based questions, they are worded differently, but what the core of all these questions is anxiety. So a lot of deep breaths, Sit quietly every day for some time. I know thanks to the pandemic we do not have access to our regular set of activities which allowed us to feel comfortable, but you know what, those things which we used to do to make us feel comfortable also took us away from our problem, because our standard strategy is sweep things under the carpet. Let's not look at what's bothering us, it'll go away on its own. Nothing goes away on its own. You have to work at it. It will come back in a different way, in a more intense manner, to hurt us in the future. So sit by yourself. It's difficult if you're not used to it, but start with even 1 minute or 2 minutes and then build up on it. So sit calmly, relax. If you're feeling the anxious thoughts, and if you're feeling those thoughts running around in your mind and it's running in a loop, watch what's happening with those thoughts. Notice that the thoughts will actually be also affecting your body. Suddenly you will start feeling the constriction in your throat or the tightness in your chest, and then you'll realize how that anxiety is not just a series of mental activities. There's also a physiology for anxiety and emotions involved, and this is where the mental health professional comes in to help you get past that. Anxiety about something, anything, always has a source. Our ability to identify the source is greatly limited because we are in the moment of anxiety. So we would be subjective, which is why we need a neutral third party who can be objective and tell us, okay, this is probably where your anxiety is coming from and this is how we can do it. A trained mental health professional. All right. Yes, we have challenges with fees. There are free services available and they are good. Please access them. The entire scope of help that can be provided for people with anxiety is enormous. It cannot be covered in a brief 10-minute video. Just remember, acknowledge yourself. Whatever you feel is valid. You are not wrong in what you think and what you feel. If you're unhappy with what you think and what you feel, that can be changed. But do not dismiss yourself. Do not put your thoughts and emotions down. This is an area, a time of great competition for all of you, but don't drive yourself nuts trying to be the best. Chill, it's one life. Relax a bit, take things slowly. I know most of your parents and teachers will not agree with it, but that's okay. It's your life. You need to be able to live in a way that keeps you at peace and not something that puts you in a frenzy. All right. Thank you all. Thank you to the organizers of St. Andrews. All the best with your efforts, and if you need anything, call me. I'm available on social media. You can connect with me there. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Shreya Rangwani. I am a psychologist here working at Ahmedabad, and I was asked to give my professional opinion for these 4 questions, so here they are. So the first question is, how do I tell my parents that I want to go to a therapist or a psychologist and I need help without being awkward or weird, and they are very religious? So firstly, we need to understand that their generation and our generation have a huge gap, and we need to understand that that time they were not lucky enough to actually prioritize mental health, or their generation was only about survival. They wanted to make sure they provide everything possible for their family. That was more materialistic, that was more for basic needs. So right now, because of their hard work, here we are lucky enough to prioritize mental health as we prioritize physical health. So we actually can understand that mental health and mental stability is as important as being physically healthy. So to make them realize that you need a professional, you need to talk it out, and it is going to be a difficult process for most of you. So before you explain them that you need to go to a professional, you need to explain them that you are going through a difficult phase, you are going through a particular problem, and not just particular problem but something that is bothering you, and you need to make sure that they understand that you have tried all the coping mechanisms that you could till now. So you need to describe them that you have tried everything, you have tried talking to other people or anything that is possible, but right now it's beyond your control, and right now you need a professional and the professional's training to actually go through this process and heal. So, and you need to make sure that you know everything about psychotherapy before you go to your parents and explain, because they will have their apprehensions and they will ask you questions about it. They will ask that why do you want it, and they can give you ideas like you just need to concentrate on your career, it's just attention seeking, and you will actually listen to things like you need to change your lifestyle, it's just your generation is just not ready to actually face or tolerate anything. So for that you need a lot of patience to just listen to them. So when you are going through something emotionally traumatic or something that is bothering you so much that you need a professional, at the same time hearing that their child is going through something so traumatic that they can't help is something they will not be able to process very easily. So you need to be sensitive enough that time that listen to them, let them ask you questions, let them tell you everything, you tell them what is going on in your life, and understand that they feel after a point they will start feeling that it's their fault that you're going through something so traumatic. They will keep blaming their upbringing. So you need to make sure that they understand that it's not their fault after a point, it's you that you have to heal, and it is going to help you later on also, because once you're mentally stable, your lot of other life problems or something, even if you're not able to concentrate on something or you're distracted, you will be able to do and concentrate a lot better in your career, in your academics, everything possible, personally, professionally. The second question is about what would you term something as I am doing all good, everything is good around me, but yet there is an empty feeling in my heart, a feeling I can't describe, a feeling I can't express. I love something very much, but my motivation is zero when I have to do it. But the next moment I'm fine too, and that feeling just randomly enters my heart. What is it? Is it sadness? Are they mood swings? Or is it because the lockdown is having an effect on our health in general? How do I feel better, or am I alright and I'm just overthinking? So these are a lot of questions and a lot of emotions gathered up in one question. So as you know, and as everyone know right now, that this pandemic has been difficult for every single person. But that doesn't mean that you are not facing something very difficult, and you can't normalize your own emotions, especially the difficult ones. And you will be seeing right now around you that people are being so productive, people are doing 100 different things, and everyone on social media is just doing something or the other. But at the same time, you actually need to understand that that's their coping mechanism, that's how they are surviving this pandemic. But that doesn't mean that you have to do the same thing and they are not facing anything difficult. So everyone's going through difficult emotions. So firstly, you need to, as you normalize this situation, don't demean your emotions also at the same time. So the good part is especially that you know and have accepted that this is difficult for you. So the situation you're going through can be due to this ongoing pandemic, or it can be that the emotions or the things that are bothering you have been repressed earlier, and because that time you didn't have that mental space or time frame, or you were not ready for it, and you had to concentrate on your career, on your life, on your family, anything. But right now, due to this pandemic, you're at home, you don't have a lot of things to do, you're not going out, you don't have a lot of distractions. So it can be that those emotions are just coming to the surface level now. So the way you are describing your feelings shows how badly it's affecting you, right? So I'm sure it must be really difficult, but don't run away from these feelings. You need to understand that if you run away from your sadness, if you run away from all the anxiety triggers, it's still going to be there. So it's better to face it, and it's better that if you feel after a point that you can't handle it, please go to a professional, seek mental help. And if it's just overthinking, the professional can help you channelize it. And if it's not, then you can actually get help for that. So by the time this pandemic is over and you get back to your normal life, you will actually see the difference, the mental stability and everything. The third one is, what's healing from a trauma or a heartbreak? How do you know what you are holding on to? How do you know you are actually healing, or are you just distracting yourself with things? Is it fine to be sad about things I thought I healed from? Firstly, healing is a very individualistic process, and it's very different for every single person who grieves. Today, if I have been through a trauma, let's go with heartbreak only. So, if I have been through a heartbreak and you have also been through a heartbreak, the way I am going to process it or heal from it, it's going to be very different from how you deal with it. There can be similarities, there can be so many things similar, but at the same time, your grieving process, your healing process is going to be entirely different. So make sure that you understand the point that just because everyone around you is going through heartbreak and everyone is facing traumas, and people will tell you that other people go through worse problems, that does not mean that you are not grieving and you are not allowed to actually feel sad or cry or feel horrible right now actually. So going through a trauma or a heartbreak can make an individual go through anxiety, stress, and some people actually go into denial that time because they are not ready to face it and they go numb that time. So it's your choice. It's, as I said, it depends on the individual. So when you talk about holding on, there are times when more than the situation or the person, we hold on to the after effect. We are so comfortable in that situation. We are so comfortable in that sadness that we don't want to heal sometimes. So we really need to make sure that we give ourselves time. We are kind to ourselves that time. So when you're healing from a particular trauma, it doesn't make you feel sad or heartbroken every single minute, but it will keep coming and going. So you need to make sure that as time passes, that healing and that grief or that sadness, the intensity is going to decrease only if you actually let it happen. So just because you are feeling fine for 5 minutes and then the half an hour after that is horrible, it is going to get better. So instead of running away or instead of getting distracted from that feeling, make sure you hold on to it. Make sure that you don't run away, and either you get used to this feeling or you're healing from that trauma. It's not necessary that you always get closure to these things also. So make sure that sometimes you have to make peace with the situation and heal, just to heal yourself. So this process takes time, and the only thing you can do is to consume that feeling totally to the core. So it depends on the situation if you can feel it to the core or not, but it's better not to distract yourself from that. So if your sadness or if the grieving process is making you feel so heartbroken and making you feel panicky and you have all kinds of anxieties and insecurities in your head, let it be for a while. Let it happen, and once that feeling is over and it's out of the system, only then you will have the space for that other positive feelings. But if you run away from it, it's going to just pile on and it's going to affect you really badly later on. So feel that emotion so that once you're done, you have that space. Have that space for happiness, have that space to forgive someone, to forgive yourself after a point. And lastly, as I said, don't be harsh on yourself. Just because everyone goes through the same thing or everyone goes through traumas doesn't mean that you are not allowed to feel this way. The fourth question is, this question hasn't been long in my mind, and I saw this movie Capernaum, and a running guilt poured in the guilt was of being alive. You know the feeling when you see someone less fortunate and we feel, are we even worthy of everything that we have received? Am I even worthy of all the privileges that I have received? These privileges doesn't concern money. It just concerns the feeling of knowing that at home they will be good at night, and all such feelings that makes me think I'm privileged, and these things make me doubt my existence and question myself. How can I avoid this feeling? The feeling you're going through, and as I said, it's normal, but at the same time it shows that you are an empathetic person. So instead of avoiding that feeling, you can actually use it as your strength. You already know that you are sensitive enough. You know that other people are not as privileged as you, that considers monetarily, that considers that just look at this pandemic. You have a roof on your head, there are people who don't. People have lost their jobs, people don't have income anymore, people are going through anxieties, people are literally breaking down, people are suffering so much physically, mentally, emotionally. So privileges are of all kinds, but you need to make sure that the point is you don't have to avoid this feeling. This can be used as your strength, and you can do your part. You can do your part for the community and value all the privileges that you have right now. They can make you a better person. You can help other people go through this feeling, but the point is you don't have to avoid this. Feel happy about yourself that you're privileged and just value it, and let other people also know that it's okay, and it's beyond your control. After a point, you did not decide that you're going to be this privileged. You are lucky, and sometimes other people are not lucky in those matters. But instead of avoiding this feeling, instead of just thinking that why am I privileged and did I do anything worthy enough for that, just let it be. Just feel good about it and make sure that instead of sympathizing, instead of feeling sorry for other people, empathize. Just feel better about it. Thank you.
So, when you talk about stress, especially in the context of exams, I think some amount of stress is good, right? Stress is not really all that bad. I think we keep giving the word stress such a negative terminology, such a negative outlook. But stress in itself is actually good. And in fact, some amount of stress teaches us how to get better, how to cope, how to improve ourselves. So I feel that this is a new challenge, and this could probably help you understand how well you cope with challenges. Life is really not very simple. It's not like it's a flat line, like everything works out perfectly fine all the time. There are going to be days that are bad, and there are going to be times that are really as challenging as the last 6 months have been for us. And I think this experience, this entire pandemic experience that we've had, will teach you, or will probably prepare you for those challenges that you're going to come up with. So I have students coming to me, kids who've been preparing for their medical entrances, kids who've been preparing for their IIT entrances, children who are appearing for their architecture exams, children who are just generally fed up that their university exams have not happened and they've been studying for the longest time. I think this is a good time for you to see how you deal with stress. Sometimes when we are stressed, the right reaction is to get all hyper and get all excited and get ready to fight and face the challenge as if it's a real big thing that we have to deal with. And sometimes it's okay to just wait and let things go by, especially when the stress is something that you can't control. And I think this is a good chance for you to practice the just staying put and relaxing and waiting for the time when you will get better clarity about how you will have to prepare for your exams. So I think that would be the only advice that I have to offer to you here, that wait and see how things emerge. Once the exams are announced, then you start preparing the way you know best how to prepare for your exams. But in the meanwhile, try and make sure that you keep in touch with your books. Don't let go completely, and don't let it be as if you are on some unlimited vacation. Make sure you keep picking up those books, reading on and off, and keeping yourself updated with the information that you should know. So I know that it must be extremely annoying, right? That all of your friends are enjoying and getting to go out and do all the things that you would otherwise have done had the coronavirus pandemic not happened. But unfortunately, it did happen. And since it has happened, your parents, being the strict parents that they aren't going to allow you to go out, and especially not given the fact that you could possibly catch an infection and come back home. I think what you could try and focus on is the fact that your parents are really concerned about your safety. And I know that at this point of time, having fun seems, far more important than the safety bit. But please remember that if you bring this virus back home, you could potentially infect your parents, and they are older. They might not be able to fight the infection as well as you would. If there are any elders or really young children at home, they could catch the infection, and that could cause a problem. I also think that one aspect of your friendship is going out and hanging out with your friends at, say waterfalls or malls, or going outside for picnics. But another aspect of your friendship could be just hanging out together, chilling and talking to each other and spending time doing things that you enjoy. So I think you should try looking at options that you could engage with your friends online with, so that it doesn't cause a problem to your parents and you are able to enjoy as well. I know so many people are running art workshops or fitness workshops or dance workshops, and these could be done with each of you, as in you and all your friends, in their own places, and the person who's conducting it running it online. I think this might really help you, because given the fact that you're living with your parents right now, that's not something that's going to change. If they're strict about it, I don't think they're going to let you go until and unless the government or the medical community comes up with some solution to the virus. So till that situation, I think just learn to relax within the environment that you have and try and focus on what's in your control. So I think this is a really nice question, especially because the whole concept about emotions and the whole concept about how to control your emotions is coming out through this question. I don't know if I would recommend that you should control your emotions, because I think when you try to control it and suppress it, it does come out in some way or the other. So I think what you could do is try and express that emotion in a less harmful, less threatening manner. So suppose you feel like crying, go ahead and have a good cry. Don't stop yourself from crying. But when crying, try and pay attention to your thoughts and see what the thoughts tell you. Are the thoughts saying that I am no good, I am useless, I'm worthless, what's the point of going on? Now these are not thoughts that you want to continue. So these are thoughts that you could try and change. But go ahead and express that emotion. I don't think suppressing the emotion is a very good idea. Similarly, a lot of times, we are always taught to control our anger. And I feel that controlling anger ends up, directing it in a completely unplanned, unprepared, unmanageable way. So I think a better way would be to direct that anger towards something else. Like for example, if you feel a build-up of a lot of energy in you because you are angry, go and do a workout. Punch a pillow. Do something that lets out the steam. So the idea is not to control your emotions. The idea is to let them out, but let them out in a manner that doesn't hurt you, doesn't hurt anybody else, and doesn't encourage you to break anything or destroy things. And if you do that, I think you will be in better control of your emotions than most of the adults I know. So all the best. So like I spoke about in the previous question, we have a variety of emotions that we go through and we experience all through the day. And loneliness, feeling tired, feeling bored are part of the entire spectrum of emotions that we experience. If this feeling of boredom or feeling of, I don't want to study is something that's happening on a one-off day, don't worry about it. There's nothing really to do about it. Probably your brain is just a little tired and wants a break. So give it that break. Maybe, take the time off to do something that you enjoy, engage in some activities that you like, and then come back refreshed, ready to study again. But if you feel this is something that is happening constantly, I think you need to take a look and see whether this has been happening for a week, 2 weeks, a month, more than that. If you think it's happening for more than 2 or 3 weeks, you could try and look if, along with the lack of focus and concentration, are you feeling low? Are you feeling sad on most of the days? Are you sort of feeling that you don't have the energy to do anything? And at times, do you feel like even things that you were otherwise interested in are not really things that you want to do anymore? So if that is happening, then you might need to seek help from a therapist or a psychiatrist who might be able to evaluate you and see whether you are showing signs of anxiety or depression. It sounds like the thoughts that you've shared point towards a feeling of boredom. But if the boredom is happening too often, then that's something you need to check, because you're at a stage in life where you probably need to focus completely on your studies. So when we look at signs and symptoms of psychological concerns, we always look at whether or not they're impacting the person's quality of life and their functioning in their goals that are there for their particular time of life. And for you right now, the goal is to study. So if it is interfering with your studies, then you should definitely get it checked out and see whether it could be pointing towards something deeper. Sometimes depression, anxiety, trauma, difficult family experiences at home, and also a lack of focus or concentration because of other medical conditions can interfere with your focus. So I think you could, if it's something that's been going on for far too long, check out with a therapist or with a psychiatrist and see whether this is something that you need to get treated or get clarified. Like I spoke about depression in the last question, not feeling anything or an overall feeling of lack of interest or a lack of expressiveness in anything could point towards a depressive illness. And if it's been happening for more than 2 weeks, then I would definitely recommend that you get it checked out. A lot of times, we attribute it to the stress that we've been through. So I get people who come to the clinic and tell me that this is how I'm feeling. I don't feel like doing anything anymore. I feel like I am just not interested in anything. Or people around me seem extremely excited and extremely sad at times, but I don't feel either, and I'm almost emotionally numb. And I tell them that what has happened in the past that has contributed to this, what has led to this happening. And when we talk about past experiences, things that have happened, sometimes it comes across that there have been too many emotional triggers in the past, and now the person is just too exhausted to react anymore. But that's not a good sign, because that means that you've been dealing with far too much on your plate and you need to probably reach out and take help. So if the feeling of being emotionally detached or emotionally numb is happening for you for more than 2 weeks, please reach out and take help. Taking help is something people are most scared about. I think mental health is one of the most common conditions for which people are only comfortable to ask questions anonymously. But please be assured that when you reach out and take help, whichever professional you reach out to will make sure to give you their possibly best opinion, and they would probably be able to guide you as to how you could modify this for yourself. I'm sure your college would have some sort of help set up for students who need help, or you could reach out to a mentor, a teacher, a good friend who has been through probably somebody a little more senior than you who's been through a few experiences and who could guide you accordingly. And I think you should talk to somebody and see what can happen or what can be done about this, because this is not something you want to just let go. Emotions are a very important part of the human experience, and I think that is something that if you are missing out on, it could cause complications in the future. So I think it would be a good idea for you to go and get this checked out as well and see what can be done about it.
Hello, good evening everyone. This is Hamida. I'm a mental health professional, a practicing counseling psychologist and a child psychologist. St. Andrews, Mumbai has organized an amazing mental health session. In this this situation where Suicide Prevention Month is going on, and all of us are really wanting to know a little more about mental health every day. So yes, I'm honorable that I have been given this chance to, answer a few questions asked by the students there. Some of the questions that have been asked, the first one is, how do I get over self-sabotage? That's an excellent question, I should say. Self-sabotage. Let's understand the meaning of this particular word. It basically means self-destruction, where we have an intention to do something, whether related to our daily routine or whether related to our career or anything. As a matter of fact, anything that is significant to us, we have an intention to do it, we want to do it, but there's something that stops us. There's something that tells us that it's not worth it, let's not do it. It's going to be risky, you're going to fail. So this is an entire process, or an entire phase that we call self-sabotage. The question is, how do we get over it? There are plenty of ways that we can get over this particular phase. One of the main important thing is understand the signs. Understand that which are the sentences, which are the particular things that makes you think that you can't do it. Let's say for career, or let's say for a relationship, if there's something that tells you that this is not possible, it's not going to happen. So understand those signs, take them, mark them, then gradually work on them. How do we get over it? First of all, understand the signs. Understand the signs that tells you, or that restrains you from doing something. So understand that what are the things that you or your mind doesn't want you to do it. First, that's the first step. We understand that particular thing. We identify the root cause. We identify that why are these particular things are not acceptable by our subconscious mind. Yes. So self-sabotage is a phase, or is a entire process that usually is a conflict between our subconscious mind and our conscious mind. So yes, we have to understand the signs that which particular aspects of our lives are always coming to us as a self-destructive signs. That is one thing. We identify the root cause. So whether it's the career part that's being, where we are procrastinating, or we are being a little destructive, or we are being a little, very making everything on a delay and not able to finalize anything, or having a lot of conflicts. So what we do here is we identify the root cause, that why does this particular thing happen, and when does it happen. And main importantly, identifying the root cause means why does it happen. So after you understand the sign, identify the root cause. After identifying the root cause, reflect upon it. Reflect upon why is there procrastination, why is there conflict of interest or conflict of anything. So after identifying the root cause, reflect upon yourself. After reflecting, find out little points, very little points, your inner positivity that makes you do anything related to that particular aspects of your life. The next question is, how to guide a family member or friend to get professional help. I think this is a question I think all of us are coming across daily basis. Almost all of mental health professionals out there. So basically, in these days, or in the days like this, where mental health awareness in the country is growing, and I wouldn't say it's not there, it's growing rapidly, which is a good thing. But at the same time, after the awareness, are we reaching the stage where everyone who is aware of mental health, are they seeking help? This is a question that is very different and very difficult to answer in one particular way, because there's no one answer to this question. Because suppose you have a friend who is very stubborn and who doesn't want to listen about mental health and who doesn't want to listen about a psychologist at all. So in such a situation, what you could do is you could, go to your friend or your loved one and tell them that I understand you, and the only thing that is I am concerned about you, and that is the reason I want you to seek professional help. And such things which does not only make them feel that you are just telling them to go to a professional and you think something otherwise about them. That taboos that we have around, people use the word like abnormal or whatever. So when we go to someone and tell them these things, that's the first thing that comes across their minds. So what we do is we show them the importance of them in our lives and how much their symptoms or whatever they are going through have been affecting you as well, or somewhere where you make them feel that whatever they are going through is important to you because you're concerned about that person, you love that person so much that you want that person to seek help, and there's nothing wrong in seeking help. So there's no one answer to how do you convince your friend or how do you help your friend or loved one to guide through a professional. There are a lot of things that a lot of methods that you could use. The method that you could use with one person may not be the same method for another person. Yes, all the methods, all the ways of speaking to your loved one about this particular thing differs. I wouldn't say that there is a definite answer for this as well. Maybe we don't know. The research has a lot of questions. The research has a lot of answers to say about this. So there are a few researches which says that the adults, the senior citizens of every country almost has mental health better than their children or than their young adults. So that's the scenario where senior citizens have a better mental health than the children or the young adults. But considering our mental health right now, so if I talk about my mental health or if I talk about your mental health, we don't know if it improves with the age, because if we don't sort out the things that are going on in our mind right now, if I don't sort out whatever has happened in my childhood, when I was younger, when I was a child, if I don't sort out that right now, that may keep on going till my adulthood, till my old age, and when I get 50, 60, 70. So mental health improvement is a question of research as of now, I guess. And it completely depends on how you are working with your mental health right now. So it improves, as your age grows. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here, St. Andrews. I'm really grateful. It was lovely answering to lovely questions by your students. I must say that the thirst they have to know about mental health was great. I could know that from their questions. So thanks a lot. I hope this helps. I hope whatever my answers are helps them. And if there's anything that any of the questioner out there wants to speak more about their questions, they could definitely reach out to me. Thanks a lot. Have a good day and all the best.